We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Hundreds of relieved passengers disembarked a coronavirus-stricken cruise ship in Japan after testing negative for the disease that has now claimed more than 2,000 lives in China and spread panic worldwide.
Kentaro Iwata, a professor at the Infectious Diseases Division of Kobe University, says in a video published online that he is self-quarantining after a brief visit to Diamond Princess cruise ship, where he raised major concerns about the procedures on board, saying it was completely chaotic.
China's COVID-19 death toll tops 2,000, while Hong Kong reports its second death.
And the world is failing to protect children from the health dangers posed by climate change and poor diet, a landmark UN report says, warning that every child is under immediate threat.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Passengers who have tested negative for the new coronavirus and are not showing symptoms on Wednesday began leaving a cruise ship in Japan that has seen more than 500 cases of the potentially deadly disease. Take a look. I am relieved. I want to take a good rest, said this 77-year-old Japanese passenger who declined to give his name. He said he would be boarding Japan's famously crowded railway system to go home. Yellow-dotted city buses plus a dozen or so taxis were lined up to whisk away the passengers, many of them dragging their luggage behind them and waving to former shipmates on balconies. The cruise ship was put in quarantine in Japan's port of Yokohama in early February after a man who disembarked in Hong Kong was found to have the virus. Passengers were initially isolated in their cabins and later allowed to sporadically go out on deck. Despite the quarantine measures, day by day, the number of infected people grew rapidly. The Diamond Princess has proved a fertile breeding ground for the COVID-19 virus, with at least 542 positive cases. And Japan has faced mounting criticism for its quarantine arrangements as the passengers disperse. The ship is the biggest cluster outside China, where new figures showed the death toll surging beyond 2,000, with more than 74,000 infected. Hundreds more cases have been reported in 24 countries. Now, several experts have raised questions about how effective the quarantine measures were. Professor Kentaro Iwata at the Infectious Diseases Division of Kobe University blasted the on-ship quarantine as a major failure. Take a look.
So it was completely chaotic. And some crews had a fever. They went to the medical center while wearing an N95 mask, but he didn't have any protection between his room and the medical room. And I was so scared. I was so scared of getting COVID-19 because there was no way to tell where the virus is. No green zone, no red zone. Everywhere could have virus and everybody was not careful about it. I never had fear of getting infection myself for Ebola, SARS, cholera, because I know how to protect myself and how to protect others. And the people were eating on one place, people were wearing a PPE and off PPE and eating lunch with the gloves on and just dealing with the smartphone with full PPE. So it was completely chaotic because I'm in a single room now, and I'm separated from my family. I'm very scared of getting infection myself, and I'm very scared of infecting my family too.
Now, the professor also said he was more afraid of catching the virus on board than he had been working in the field during Ebola and SARS outbreaks. Several countries appear to have lost patience with the onboard quarantine and chartered planes to repatriate citizens. In the first such evacuation on Monday, more than 300 Americans flew home even though 14 had tested positive. Britain, Hong Kong, and Australia are among other countries that have vowed to repatriate people from the ship, but will insist on a further 14-day quarantine on home soil. South Korea vowed to block foreigners who have been on board the Diamond Princess from entering the country. This embarkation is expected to take around 3 days as more test results become available, and the crew will begin a new quarantine when the last passenger has left.
Meanwhile, people in Yokohama appeared supportive of the decision to allow the passengers out despite the virus fears. Take a look.
Meanwhile, dozens of passengers stuck for nearly a week on a U.S. cruise ship in Cambodia disembarked on Wednesday after being given the all-clear from the deadly coronavirus. The Western Dam made shore in Shannockville on February 13 after being rejected by 5 countries over fears its passengers could be carrying the new virus, which has killed more than 2,000 people. Hundreds were allowed off after basic health checks, among them an 83-year-old American woman who was later diagnosed with the virus while in transit in Malaysia. Now, that raised fears many other Western Dam passengers could be spreading the virus as they scattered, although no other cases have been recorded. Once the American woman's case was discovered, the remaining passengers on the Western Dam were ordered to stay on board, but they've now all been given a clean bill of health.
An additional 79 cases of coronavirus have been discovered aboard the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Japan, the health ministry said, bringing the total to 621. The new figures come as an initial batch of passengers began disembarking after enduring a 14-day quarantine and then testing negative for the virus. The death toll from China's new coronavirus epidemic jumped past 2,000 after 136 people or more people died, with the number of new cases falling for a second straight day, according to the National Health Commission. This brings the total number of confirmed cases in mainland China to 74,185. The death toll rose to 2004, with most of the deaths in central Hubei province, where the virus first emerged in December before spiraling into a nationwide epidemic. In its daily update, the National Health Commission reported 1,749 new cases of people infected with the virus nationwide, the lowest number of new cases this month. Outside the epicenter, there were only 56 new cases reported, falling for a 15th day in a row. President Xi Jinping, in a phone call with the British Prime Minister, said China's measures were achieving visible progress, according to state media Tuesday. However, the World Health Organization has cautioned that it is too early to tell if the decline will continue.
Meanwhile, an elderly Hong Kong man who contracted the new coronavirus died on Wednesday. It's the second fatality from the outbreak in the semi-autonomous Chinese city. Officials said the man was taken to hospital on February 12 after a fall at home. He had a fever and tested positive for the virus, dying a week later. Hong Kong has confirmed the virus in 62 patients, 2 of whom have died. The first infections were largely found within people who had traveled to the epicenter in China's central Hubei province. But in recent weeks, local infections have increased among residents with no history of travel to China. Hong Kong is on edge over the virus, partly because of its own tragic history of experiencing a deadly disease. Back in 2003, 299 Hong Kongers were killed by an outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, 40% of the global total fatalities.
In the midst of major virus panic, residents in the city of Hong Kong have begun to wear masks en masse. Long queues and mask shortages have pushed some residents to create their own masks at home. But how effective are they to combat the spread of the virus? Watch this.
I actually bought these from eBay.
Not so comfortable, but however, that is prevent sick. That's good.
Respirators are designed to protect the user because they want to keep the contaminants out. This, actually in the healthcare environment, is meant to protect the patients.
I find material, my handkerchief, and some, I don't know how to say, budget ball. And then I combine together and use some wire for top, and then some elastic, and just sew it myself. How many?
Meanwhile, South Korea reported 20 new confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus on Wednesday, increasing its total by nearly 2/3, including a cluster of at least 16 centered on the southern city of Daegu. The trade-dependent nation has been hit by the economic fallout from the virus outbreak in neighboring China. But until Wednesday's jump, its own case numbers had hardly changed for several days. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or KCDC, said in a statement that 20 new coronavirus cases had been confirmed, raising its total from 31 to 51. Of those, 18 were in Daegu and neighboring North Gyeongsang province, with 15 of them believed to be linked to a single patient, a 61-year-old woman. 14 of them attended the same church as the woman, according to the KCDC, while the other one had come into contact with her at a hospital. She had first developed a fever on February 10, but then reportedly refused to be tested twice for the coronavirus on the grounds that she had not recently traveled abroad. She was not put into quarantine until a week later and was confirmed as the country's 31st case on Tuesday.
China on Wednesday ordered 3 reporters from American newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, to leave the country over what it deemed a racist headline in one of the harshest moves against foreign media in years. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said the journal op-ed titled "China is the real sick man of Asia" had a racially discriminatory and sensational headline and slammed the newspaper for not issuing an official apology. As such, China has decided that from today, the press cards of 3 Wall Street Journal reporters in Beijing will be revoked, Geng told a press briefing. The Journal reported that a Deputy Bureau Chief, Josh Chin, and reporter Chao Deng, both U.S. nationals, as well as reporter Philip Wen, an Australian, who had been ordered to leave the country in 5 days. The 3 journalists are in the Wall Street Journal's news section, which is separate from editorials and op-eds. The opinion piece, written by Bard College professor Walter Russell Mead, also criticized the Chinese government's initial response to the new coronavirus outbreak, calling the Wuhan city government at the virus epicenter secretive and self-serving, while dismissing national efforts as ineffective. The February 3 piece slandered the efforts of the Chinese government and the Chinese people to fight the epidemic, said Geng.
And as the usually bustling streets of Chinatown in Los Angeles are mostly deserted amid fears about the coronavirus outbreak, Asian Americans say they are being unfairly associated with the disease. Take a look.
And so the thing that I'm actually most concerned about is kind of the racial profiling and xenophobia that's been happening. I think there's still a lot of research that's being done around coronavirus, but the fact that people within the Asian community, people who look Asian, people who look Chinese are being identified as having the virus, I think is a little bit more concerning of a reaction that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we do worry, or I do worry because of that, because of course, the cases that we've heard. And we are afraid that they look at us because we're Asian, that we might be part of the coronavirus.
It's been a little bit slow lately. People are scared, but there's nothing to be scared of. Everything's fine here. Yeah, but it has gone down a little bit.
The World Health Organization has said that it has dispatched more than 12,000 kilograms of personal protective equipment to priority countries in Western Pacific, Southeast Asia, and the African region. Let's listen in.
We have shipped supplies of personal protective equipment to 21 countries and will ship to another 106 countries in the coming weeks. By the end of this week, 40 countries in Africa and 29 in the Americas are due to have the ability to detect COVID-19.
But we like to see progressive implementation of public health measures. So the first objective in Wuhan was to contain the virus at the epicenter, and you've heard the Director General speak, fight the virus at the epicenter. Suppressing that virus now allows space to really do much more active surveillance. While the authorities there are doing that active surveillance, they don't want the virus to return to other places. Beijing is a central point in the country where many, many workers return to. So what China are trying to do is, while they're getting success in putting out one fire, they don't want the fire to start somewhere else. So they're taking very directed measures to ensure that people returning to the city are observed and monitored. We can save many, many lives in the coming months, with or without a vaccine. We all want to invest in the vaccine as a long-term solution, but there are people sick now, and there are health systems that are vulnerable now. So we need to balance our investments and invest in the weaker health systems and our own systems. We can save a lot of lives through supportive therapy, by testing the drugs we're currently testing, and by getting everything in our systems working. And then we do the other things, and we develop the vaccine. And we do have to make decisions on vaccine investment now.
In order to avert any serious problem in the rest of the world, and use the window of opportunity to the maximum, it's the simple public health solutions that we should do that should really be our focus, while of course preparing for the vaccine. So that balancing act is very, very important. We do what should be done today, and then we invest also in the future to prepare for the future.
Meanwhile, 2 people in Iran has tested positive for the deadly new coronavirus, according to the health ministry in the Islamic Republic's first cases of the disease. Kianush Jahanpour, a ministry spokesman, said the cases were detected in the city of Qom, south of the Iranian capital. The health ministry spokesman also said additional tests were being done on the 2 cases and final results would be announced as soon as possible. The new coronavirus epidemic has killed more than 2,000 people in China and infected more than 74,000. It has also spread to at least 24 other countries. Now, the United Arab Emirates was the first country in the Middle East to report cases of the coronavirus last month.
One year after the unprecedented summit held in the Vatican on the abuse of minors in the Catholic Church, associations of victims take stock of the past year, saying that the fight in our countries is not over.
Canon law is a priest protection system, and to really enact zero tolerance for abusive priests and for their enablers, you would have to undo the fundamental character of canon law. I don't think it's going to happen under this pope or any pope. I think it's going to happen via incursions by civil authorities, one country at a time. I think zero tolerance is a pledge the Pope is choosing not to do. I think he is picking and choosing the changes he's going to make in this church, and he has decided not to pursue that one. I'm not sure he was ever inclined to do it anyway. When a bishop enters a diocese, he is responsible for knowing if abusers are part of his personnel. He is responsible for going back to his files. It has to be a first 90-day task that he gets himself acquainted with those secret files and finds out who these men are, and if they're still in ministry, remove them.
So the fight in our countries is not over, and in other countries it is going to start. We continue to demand zero tolerance for offenders and their accomplices, independent investigation of the crimes of the past. If the criminal system is not able to do so, as it is the case in many European countries, we need truth and justice commissions.
The summit had disappointed with its lack of announcements as the church is in turmoil with successive revelations on ever more massive scandals of pedophile assaults committed for decades by priests or clerics and often covered by their hierarchy.
You know, it's 10.6 in Boston.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood.
Watch your favorite Nat 25 shows on OSN Channel 725, same day as the Philippines.
Welcome back. No single country is adequately protecting children's health, their environment, and their futures, finds a landmark report released today by a commission of over 40 child and adolescent health experts from around the world. The commission was convened by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and The Lancet. Take a look. Now, the report, titled "A Future for the World's Children," found that the health and future of every child and adolescent worldwide is under immediate threat from ecological degradation, climate change, and exploitative marketing practices that push heavily processed fast food, sugary drinks, alcohol, and tobacco at children. The report included a new global index of 180 countries comparing performance on child flourishing, including measures of child survival and well-being, such as health, education, and nutrition, sustainability with a proxy for greenhouse gas emissions, and equity or income gaps. According to the report, while the poorest countries need to do more to support their children's ability to live healthy lives, excessive carbon emissions disproportionately from wealthier countries threaten the future of all children. If global warming exceeds 4 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, in line with current projections, this would lead to devastating health consequences for children due to rising ocean levels, heat waves, proliferation of diseases like malaria and dengue, and malnutrition. The index also showed that children in Norway, the Republic of Korea, and the Netherlands have the best chance at survival and well-being, while children in Central African Republic, Chad, Somalia, Niger, and Mali face the worst odds. The report also highlighted the distinct threat posed to children from harmful marketing. Evidence suggests that children in some countries see as many as 30,000 advertisements on television alone in a single year, while youth exposure to vaping or e-cigarettes advertisements increased by more than 250% in the U.S. over 2 years, reaching more than 24 million young people. Children's exposure to commercial marketing of junk food and sugary beverages is also associated with purchase of unhealthy foods and overweight and obesity, linking predatory marketing to the alarming rise in childhood obesity. The number of obese children and adolescents increased from 11 million in 1975 to 124 million in 2016, an 11-fold increase with dire individual and societal costs. Now, to protect the children, the Independent Commission authors called for a new global movement driven by and for children. Specific recommendations included: stop CO2 emissions with the utmost urgency to ensure children have a future on this planet, place children and adolescents at the center of our efforts to achieve sustainable development, new policies and investment in all sectors to work towards child health and rights, incorporate children's voices into policy decisions, tighten national regulation of harmful commercial marketing, supported by a new optional protocol to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Former South Korean President Lee Myungbak was taken to prison Wednesday to begin a 17-year term for bribery and embezzlement after losing an appeal against a lighter sentence. Lee, in office from 2008 to 2013, was briefly jailed in 2018 after being sentenced to 15 years and fined 13 billion won, or that's $11 million, but was granted bail while he appealed. He was found guilty of creating slush funds of tens of millions of dollars and accepting bribes from Samsung Electronics in return for a presidential pardon for its chairman, Lee Kun-hee, who was jailed for tax evasion. At a hearing on Wednesday, Seoul Central District Court ordered a heavier sentence, saying Lee did not show a sign of remorse or sense of responsibility for his wrongdoings. He instead blamed civil servants he worked with and Samsung employees, the court said. Several South Koreans or Korean presidents have ended up in prison after leaving office, often as a result of investigations started by political rivals. Lee's successor, Park Geun-hye, is currently serving 32 years in jail for bribery and abuse of power after being ousted in 2017 over a nationwide corruption scandal that prompted massive street protests. Another former leader, Roh Moo-hyun, committed suicide after being questioned in a corruption probe involving his family.
Former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott has claimed very top-level Malaysian officials believed vanished flight MH370 was deliberately downed by the captain in a mass murder-suicide. Now, the Malaysia Airlines jet vanished on March 8, 2014, carrying 239 people, mostly from China, en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. No sign of the plane was found in a 120,000 square kilometer Indian Ocean search zone, and the Australian-led search, the largest in aviation history, was suspended in January 2017. In an excerpt from a Sky News documentary airing on Wednesday, the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, claims he was told within a week of its vanishing that Malaysia believed the captain had intentionally downed the jet. He said, quote, "I'm not going to say who said what to whom, but let me reiterate, I want to be absolutely crystal clear. It was understood at the highest levels that this was almost certainly murder-suicide by the pilot, mass murder-suicide by the pilot," unquote. Now, Zahari's family, the captain, and friends have long strongly rejected such claims as baseless. Malaysia's former Premier Najib Razak, who was in power during the tragedy, said suspicions over the disappearance weren't made public, and there was no proof that the pilot was responsible.
The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, visits Brussels to promote the idea of an associate citizenship for Londoners who still very much feel part of the European family and hope to retain some of the same rights as EU citizens, even though Britain has left the European Union. Watch this.
I think that many Londoners are heartbroken that we've left the European Union, but we are still very much feel part of the European family. We're European and we feel part of the European project. I've also explained to Guy that actually I want to bang the drum for our city and be close to our friends in Europe, and they are our friends. But also seeing there's a possibility, even though we've left the European Union, of some sort of associate citizenship going forward, and I've been pleased with the response, and it gives hope to Londoners and others across our country who want to maintain a close relationship with the European Union. And it's, I think, an olive branch that the British government could be doing and a way of bringing our country back together again.
There will be a reciprocity. Yeah? So the idea in the resolutions that we voted about that citizenship would be that this is in reciprocity, so that also from the UK side they should offer them the same possibilities and the same rights to EU citizens.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
It's time to take one step further and face the impossible. Time to search the unknown and fight for the truth. Time to overcome boundaries and connect the world. It's time for DW News.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
In Good Shape, your weekly health show on DW that covers many aspects of healthcare. We look at what's new in medical treatment, nutrition, fitness, and beauty. We discuss these topics in depth with specialists.
Welcome back. German sportswear maker Adidas said Wednesday store closures in China had brought plummeting sales since the beginning of the novel coronavirus outbreak in late January. Take a look. Now, Adidas said it faced a significant number of store closures on its roster of 500 owned stores and 11,500 franchises in China, while many fewer people are shopping at those which remain open. The group's Greater China region, which includes Taiwan and Hong Kong, has for years been one of the fastest growing areas of the world for Adidas sales. And the Asia-Pacific region as a whole accounted for around one-third of Adidas' 6.4 billion euros or $6.9 billion in revenues in the first 9 months of 2019. Looking ahead, Adidas said it could not predict how big the impact of the virus would be on its annual results.
Chinese restaurants in the Greater Toronto area come together to fight against the decline in customers and racism amid fears of the coronavirus outbreak.
We're very fortunate to have a wonderful healthcare system here in Canada, certainly here in the province of Ontario. And if everyone takes the precautions of just washing their hands, you've taken the vast majority of the steps that you can take. So get out, enjoy what the city of Markham and all these beautiful restaurants have to offer.
I think it's bad, it's not good. I think we should fight against the virus, not Chinese, right? Some people feel worried, okay, so that's fine, but like, don't take it as an excuse to be racism to Chinese or other Asians.
But when the people heard the virus from China, maybe I can understand them. So we cut down almost 2/3 customers. So now we can do is cut down maybe the employee and ask them to do 1 day and take 1 day rest.
You know, we have a Wuhan noodle because the name has Wuhan. They got a lot of harassment phone calls, but the good part is that when they report this to the police and then to the social media, they got a lot of support from the mayor, from the politicians, from the customers. So a lot of people just rushing into their restaurants to eat there to show the support. So we're feeling that we are actually very proud to be Canadians, Chinese Canadians. We're proud of this multicultural country. Whenever there's a stereotype and there's a criticism, there's racism, and we see the most of the people are standing together to denounce it.
Despite the World Health Organization's declaration of a World Health emergency, officials in Canada have said the risk of Canadians remains low.
Meanwhile, normally bustling century-old Chinatowns from Melbourne to San Francisco have fallen quiet, and businesses are struggling to survive as fears over the coronavirus outbreak ripple around the world. Take a look.
A lot of people stop coming to Chinatown to eat because they reckon that the Chinatown might be an easy place to catch virus, which I don't believe is correct. But the thing was, it's fierce among the people. The people stop coming over to eat, and there's no business in Chinatown. So the business in Chinatown has already been affected.
内心的恐惧让大家都不愿意出门，然后他们报道的时候又是非常负面，都是说中国的 virus 中国的病毒，所以只要是唐人街华人聚集的地方比较多的人流量比较多的话，这个恐惧的蔓延是非常严重，所以他们能不来就不来。
Malakas ngayon delivery kasi natatakot yung mga tao lumabas.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Wednesday closed a three-nation Africa tour with a thinly veiled swipe at China as he talked up Washington's ability to stimulate growth and entrepreneurship on the continent. Watch this.
Countries should be wary of authoritarian regimes with empty promises. They breed corruption, dependency. They don't hire the local people. They don't train. They don't lead them. They run the risk that the prosperity and sovereignty and progress that Africa so needs and desperately wants won't happen. If there's one thing you should know about our president, my boss, you should know that he loves deals. He wants more to happen. He wants more to happen between the United States and nations all across Africa.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in his remarks, did not explicitly mention China, Africa's largest trading partner, but analysts predicted ahead of his trip that he would attempt to pitch the U.S. as an alternative source of investment. The amendment would be disastrous for that economy and most importantly for the South African people, he said.
They don't hire.
On the shores of Lake Ontario, a Canadian startup raised one of the earliest alarms about the risk posed by the mystery virus that emerged in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Now, how did it do it? Artificial intelligence, that is. BlueDot has developed an algorithm that can sift through hundreds of thousands of news stories a day along with the air traffic information in order to detect and monitor the spread of infectious diseases. It sent an alert to clients on December 31 about the new coronavirus outbreak, a few days before major public health authorities made official statements. BlueDot, which is based in Toronto, also correctly predicted the countries in which the risk of contagion was most acute. In 2014, Cannes launched BlueDot, which now has 40 employees, a team of physicians, veterinarians, epidemiologists, data scientists, and software developers. Together, they thrashed out a real-time warning system based on natural language processing and machine learning. Every 15 minutes around the clock, the company's algorithm scans official reports, professional forums, and online news sources, searching for keywords and phrases.
We call it the needles in the haystack. There's a massive amount of data, and the machine is finding the needles and presenting it to the human experts. The human experts examine them to determine if they seem reasonable. Once we say it's reasonable, a whole set of other analytics happen, which includes analyzing all of this travel data.
Now, if it is credible, it is punched into a database that analyzes the location of the outbreak, nearby airports, and commercial air travel itineraries from around the world. Climate data, national health system databases, and even the presence of mosquitoes or animals that transmit diseases to humans are also taken into account. Now, once that analysis is complete, BlueDot sends an alert to its clients, government agencies, airlines, hospitals, where the majority of those airline passengers might land. The goal is to allow authorities to prepare for the worst, a major disease outbreak.
In the case of this novel coronavirus, on early morning, December 31st, in the early hours of the morning, the machine algorithms that we had just talked about picked up an article in Chinese that was talking about a pneumonia involving 27 people associated with this wet market, this animal market in Wuhan. And while we didn't know this was going to become a big global outbreak, we did recognize that it had certain ingredients that were similar to what we saw during SARS. One, it was a pneumonia associated with an animal market without a clear cause. And, you know, those were some of the key factors that we considered that this could be a credible threat. We had a very large outbreak in Toronto that went on for 4 months. A number of healthcare workers were infected, including one of my colleagues. We had a number of healthcare workers who died. And so this was a really eye-opening experience and was the motivation behind everything that we're doing at BlueDot. What we are trying to do is to really push the boundaries to be using data and analytics and technology to keep moving faster. If we really think we can get in front of these infectious diseases, we're going to have to move faster than they do. And they move very, very fast.
A judge has ruled that Washington has the right to block U.S. federal agencies from buying products by Huawei on cybersecurity grounds, dismissing the Chinese telecom giant's legal challenge to a purchase ban. Huawei filed a suit nearly a year ago, claiming that Congress had failed to provide evidence to support a law that stopped government agencies from buying its equipment, services, or working with third parties that are Huawei customers. The dispute was one of several fronts in a bruising trade war between Beijing and Washington, which has accused the tech firm of stealing trade secrets from American companies and warned allies that its equipment could be used to spy on other countries. Huawei has denied the claims and accused the U.S. of trying to put the company out of business, through an unconstitutional restriction on its access to the American market. Huawei said in a statement that it was disappointed with the ruling and would continue to consider further legal options.
Dark smog is covering Almaty and Bishkek in Central Asia, where air pollution regularly soars to levels comparable to New Delhi and Lahore, despite the city's relative lack of industry and smallish populations. Take a look.
Мы, в принципе, не только ее чувствуем, мы ее даже можем видеть, когда просто какое-то серое облако над городом.
Я вижу, что мои соседи, мои друзья, они тоже очень много сильно болеют, часто болеют там легочными заболеваниями, типа как ОРВИ, да, и аллергии всякие возникают. Это прям участилось, это сразу заметно. И воздух он какой-то тяжелый, знаете, вот по утрам.
The Buffalo Bandits took on the Vancouver Warriors and came away with their 5th straight win. Here's Anthony Sevilla for the report.
The Buffalo Bandits remained undefeated on the road this season after they defeated the Vancouver Warriors 15-8 and improved the record to 6-1. Vancouver pulled the trigger early on with just 47 seconds after the first face-off. Mitch Jones' point shot went right through the Bandits' goaltender, first of 3 goals on the night. Buffalo would take advantage in the second quarter by scoring 5 unanswered goals. Despite a strong start from the Warriors, they were unable to generate that same energy late in the game. The Bandits would eventually pull away in this game with another 4 unanswered goals to claim their 5th straight victory.
Our first big win, our first win with like a good lead. That's what we've been looking for. You know, we've been having these close games, just barely squeaking it out. We needed that one. He may not be here with us, but he does a great job of being a leader from still back at home. And, you know, our defense does a great job of filling that role. You know, he's a big role on the defense, but I think they played well tonight. And he's still, even when he's not here, he's still the biggest part of our team. And it's a quick turnaround. Luckily, we've played them once before. We got to rest up. That was a tough game. Bodies are sore. We got to rest up, ice up, and then get right back into film tomorrow.
We had a game plan going in, and we thought we started the game off doing what we wanted to do. And for whatever reason, we kind of got away from that, and and they went on a couple goal run there, and we started playing a little bit undisciplined with possessions, and then near the end of the game playing undisciplined with penalties. So yeah, we battled, we did our things, but there was a point in that game where we were just like, if we just keep doing what we want to do, yeah, at the end of the day, undisciplined lacrosse will kill you every time.
Warriors forward Mitch Jones led his team in scoring, recording 3 goals and 3 assists. The former Buffalo Bandits player highlighted the many mistakes the team made in the loss to Buffalo.
I mean, that's a good team. We knew that coming in. We could talk about what they did right, but I think as a group we're kind of focused on what we did wrong. Not to take anything away from them, but there's just a lot of mistakes out there. It starts with our leadership group, but there's a lot of mistakes that we've making. We kind of had those 2 games stepping forward, and I think it was kind of a 1 step forward, 2 steps back tonight. Good news is we're back at it this weekend, so hopefully it's a blip on our radar, but we'll see how we respond.
From Vancouver, Anthony Sevilla, Eagle News, 1:25.
Ownership of what you're experiencing and wanting to be better takes courage. Asking for help is also a sign of strength. And that's what attendees at the Davis Community Members said at a gathering at the UC Davis Conference Center for the annual Mental Health Conference. Angel Membrere reports from the scene.
The Mental Health Conference at the University of California, Davis started in 2016 and continues to grow. In today's event, topics include harm reduction, recovery, peer support, and more. All topics geared toward awareness of mental health.
We're here today at the Student Mental Health Conference. It's the largest student-run mental health conference in Northern California. I think one of the beauties about this conference is, you know, it's not just people from Sacramento or UC Davis that are attending the conference. UC Davis pulls in from such a wide variety of people internationally across the country and in California. I know for myself, like I'm from Central California where there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of problems, but that's an underserved community because it's not as progressive, it's a little bit behind the time.
Mental health illnesses affect 1 in 4 people, and I think mental health is important to anyone. It's just as important as physical health, and I think it's important to take care of it, and the stigma, I mean, it's getting better, but it's still really prevalent in society, so it's important to decrease that.
The first keynote speaker, Daylene, is a mental health advocate who lives with bipolar I disorder. She describes why it is important for her to share her experiences.
So I think it's really important for me to share my story and for the 1 in 5 to also voice their stories, because that's what really erases stigma in our society, where people feel less alone and people can be in community with one another. And research shows that with people that have a mental illness and they share their stories of recovery, stigma is like decreased. So, you know, it's not only liberating for people to hear it and really educate themselves and their loved ones and the community, but it's liberating for oneself to share their stories of recovery.
I think it's important to learn about mental health for the reasons our first speaker described. If family members are ill, it's important that other family members know what the illness is and how they can help. So it's important to learn about those things.
I think it's really important to take small steps and celebrate our small victories. You know, if you're struggling with depression and you can't get out of bed in the morning, if you have small things that you want to accomplish and you celebrate those things, that is a monumental step in making your day better and improving your mental health. The last thing that I would like to say is asking for help is a sign of strength. It is never a sign of weakness. And I know that that's something that is really hard for people, you know, to have the courage to ask for help. They think that they're weak, but it's really a strong thing to do, to take ownership of what you're experiencing and wanting to be better. You know, that takes strength.
As mental health concerns continue to grow in today's society, more people seek out knowledge to be empowered to take action. In Davis, California, Angel Membrere, Eagle News, 1:25.
Thanks, Angel.
Thank you, Angel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also, check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, and We're one with 25.